HVAC, which refers to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, repairs, and general maintenance. And these professionals
Международное радио
ensure the
Китая на
home
китайском
remains
языке
functional and
прохождение
safe.
сигнала хорошего в
Josh,
Астане.
for anybody who's renting or owning property, this is something inevitably one day you will face, right? So what is it like in the UK when let's say you've got slum or problem in the house, however trivial it sounds right now, is a major headache if you're facing that in your
Диапазон
own home.
коротких
Tell
волн
us.
16
Well,
метров.
similarly, in my own country, a lot of disputes often arise between landlord or the owner of the building, whether that's a company or a specific person, so the owner and the tenant. And usually the main dispute is about maintenance issues. It's a huge topic. Things like rental increases and disputes about rent. There are different channels through which tenants are able to seek, retribution and stuff like this. It's stressful, and really it can sort of start to disrupt your life, right? Because you can have something as small as literally physically as tiny as a little hole somewhere, a little leak somewhere in your apartment, or maybe not even in your own apartment, but if you're in a building, maybe the apartment above you, maybe even 2 or 3 apartments above you. I had this issue the other day. I had people banging on my door, demanding to go into my bathroom because they needed to spot where a leak was coming from. Not my apartment, but from somewhere else. So these things are pretty common, I think, all over the world and in my country as well. When it comes to tenant rights, it starts to get kind of complicated, and there's often a bit of a grey area really, because really landlords need to ensure that property needs to be a lot of these conditions are actually quite subjective, person to person. I mean, really, it just means that there's, maybe no risk of death or something like that. But that's a very, very low bar, right? There's so many other things that need to be considered here when you consider an abode, an apartment, or a house to be livable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's similar issues in my own country.
Yeah, and also I think what you've been mentioning are more about what we can see and what we can come across these maintenance issues. But nowadays, I think more young people are complaining about the personnel that they see when they're having these kind of issues. So more specifically, repair personnel charge additional fees on site or include hidden charges unexpectedly are the things I think most of people are complaining about. For example, some repair platforms claim that they're only responsible for dispatching repair personnel and are not responsible for the content of the repair. So when the repair personnel arrive, they can use their own judgment to tell you that, various parts need to be replaced, as well as charging for repairs, etc. And this makes consumers' rights very unprotected, and they feel unsafe with, just giving their money to these people who are just asking for any kind of price.
Okay, so here comes a question, and actually I think this is pointing to maybe a shared problem globally. That is basically when there is information asymmetry, when you simply are not the specialist, and therefore you don't know what the standard pricing should be, and therefore when somebody who's a perceived professional and comes to your home and demands a certain amount of money for the service, as well as maybe some of the repair equipment, then how do you tell whether it's a ripoff or it's legit? And I think that's something that we all face as an issue. So, thoughts, Josh, about this?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I think that my answer is twofold, really. I mean, to some degree, this is a legal issue, and I think that it's really important to know your rights, and I do think that as much as there should be protections in place for people, because there is a lot of specialist things here that are difficult to understand, I think that it is really important that you know your rights, and you have, I think that as an adult living in a home, you probably have some individual responsibility to document things, keep everything well filed and organized, and I think that on know your rights, and then you'll be in a better position to, first of all, maybe better predict when something, you might be getting ripped off, but also know if something does happen to you, the rights that you have to maybe claim money back or make a claim against somebody. Hopefully you don't have to do that, but anyway, yeah, so know your rights, read up on your tenant law agreements, etc. I think a couple of tips that I have, just practical tips. One thing that you can do is get multiple quotations. Now, of course, sometimes quotations cost money in themselves, right? So it can be expensive in itself, and it depends on the issue at hand. But if you're paying for this maintenance service yourself, if it's not covered by your landlord, get multiple quotes. You get a better gauge of the price. And probably you only have to do this once or twice, because maybe if it's your first apartment, you get multiple quotes for, say, a plumbing issue in your bathroom. Maybe 5 years down the line, you have the same issue. You've got a better idea about how much this costs, right?
Right.
So, because you've already been through this experience. So I think that's something that I would recommend doing as well. And then, yeah, just, I guess, maybe learning a bit about some home DIY stuff as well, not necessarily being able to do it yourself, but being at least familiar with some of these things can also help to protect yourself from maybe being scammed.
Yeah, and here social media comes in really handy, because so many times I see when we are faced with a real life problem, and immediately it's like, go to such and such quote-unquote trusted platform of yours, and then just do a quick search, and then there are people sharing posts about their experience, and then you might be able to get an idea of, ballpark-wise, how much this thing is supposedly going to cost and how to interact with the professional. People really have a lot of time in their hands, and they like to share all the stuff on the internet, which is kind of useful. And also, here, I suppose, with the digital platforms, they're supposed to be more helpful as well. Like these days in China, like when you look for a housekeeper or a nanny or whoever provides some kind of specialized service, you're able to find pretty much 9 times out of 10 a designated platform online where you can find these professionals as well as see a short version of their employment history or hiring history, and then give reviews. And I find that to be the most powerful tool, also a deterrent of some sort of bad behavior in today's digital world. But that's not enough, apparently, because you're still seeing all these complaints that are flying around, according to the survey.
Yes, and also some of people are also complaining about the quality of these products that these maintenance workers are offering, because actually, even though it is just a leakage of water pipe, we don't understand what kind of a pipe is in good quality, and also high price of maintenance service. Bad service attitudes are all, I think, people are concerning about, because I think it is also related to the nature of this industry. I feel it's very similar to the home renovation industry. It's not a service that we regularly use. Instead, it's something that we might need only once for a long time. So, lack of knowledge about these industries, and secondly, they might not want to argue too much with, this one-time fee. So. And as a result, this leads to some repair personnel to, believe that it's okay to charge a high price, or just they give you some kind of product that they think it is okay, but it's not in good quality. And I actually personally experienced this. I hired a plumber to fix a leaking pipe. He asked for a 150 yuan right away because he needed to replace some parts of it. But I told him that you need to show me the invoice for the parts that's replaced, right? I cannot just give you money that you, just by saying it. So I wouldn't pay him if he cannot give me the invoice. So as a result, okay, he said, okay, if in that case, I'll charge you 50 yuan.
What?
Yes.
101 difference.
Yes, so that's why some of us consumers need to understand at least, okay, if you cannot give me a list of all of these prices, at least you need to prove me that it's worth that price.
Okay. That is interesting. Okay, I'm going to offer a slightly different case scenario. That is, if you're a homeowner and then most likely you will need to pay a property management fee. That's the 物业费. And usually the house maintenance fee is included there, and therefore you kind of have a scatter person or a repairman, usually it's a man, who lives in your compound or nearby, and then who's in charge of all of these repair matters within the compound. And of course, you probably still need to pay out of pocket if it's a replacement of a certain piece of equipment as such, but there's no manual fee that you need to pay on the spot. And if you know this person and you'll be able to track him down, there's a better chance that this person is going to behave in an ethical way, I suppose. And this is also kind of just assuming the worst out of people, which I really do not like. But sometimes it feels like this is kind of a battle between, the angel and the devil in a person. Because if you don't have the watchful eye of constant supervision, and you're kind of just trusting the good heart of this person, or should we say professional ethics, then how can you guarantee good service, right? And I think this is something that a lot of people aren't particularly satisfied with. So is there any way maybe to improve that?
Yeah, well, I think you make a great point, and I know, and I'm sure you guys know as well, that there are situations where people end up having a really good landlord, right? And they have a good relationship with them, and it can make things much easier if manages to be some sort of, I don't know, almost like chemistry between them, in that they don't cause, there's no issue between them, and maybe even their rent stays the same for some time, and whenever there's an issue, the landlord's really good for them. But the reality is that, as you mentioned, there is an asymmetry of information, and there's a power imbalance here. So, I mean, what can people do to protect themselves from this? Well, I think that it's probably important that from the very beginning to go in knowing that there is a power imbalance and there is legal complexity, and making sure that you are well protected from the very beginning. As however nice your landlord might be, right, you never know what might happen going down the line, and these things are just too important. Your living situation is more important than your relationship with your landlord, I think. So yeah, I think make sure that you are aware of your rights, as I mentioned before you go into this relationship.
Yes, and also I think that's why a lot of these respondents are saying that we need more clarified regulatory efforts on these. So it is necessary to actually promote some of the industry associations to strengthen some of self-discipline and formulate industry service standards, and gradually form reasonable and scientific and standardized operational content and procedures, and transparent, fair, and reasonable prices, and also qualification requirements of these business operators and personnel should be also improved. Business training should be strengthened, and the industry should be cleared of those bad players, which means I saw some of the comments saying that they need to have a blacklist of these personnel who have maybe bad attitude or have behavior of charging extra. Or I'm not saying that charging extra is forbidden. As long as it is needed, it is okay, but you need to charge reasonably.
Also, still this goes back to my panacea for all service problems that exist. Here's my panacea argument for all services that can be dispatched from an online platform. Build a solid and credible review system. It's like how you review restaurants, how you review everything you buy online. And I think the idea here is that once you're ordering service and you can compare different repair personnel's history on the platform, and you give an honest rating after you've received the service and paid, and then this is how you build a system that everybody can rely on. But if not everyone is chipping in, and not the service is particularly credible, let's say you've got people who can buy good comments and ratings as such, then it destroys the credibility and it ruins for the thing for everybody. But I think, okay, I'm proposing. Do you think this can be the way to go? On top of, okay, let's talk about regulatory efforts and industry standards, but how to, enforce it is the difficult part.
I think that relies a lot on this platform because I've seen some of these platforms having the functions that you said, and I don't think they can buy a good review for that. And actually, there are quite a few platforms now that can provide more, I think, transparent services, and their service lists are clear and showing the price of each service and the price of each part that needs to be replaced if it is necessary. And when repair personnel request payment, they will also clearly explain that you can check the relevant list on their websites or something. But the thing is, their prices are generally slightly higher than what we can have normally in some maybe maintenance stores. But what you save is I think maybe anxiety or your energy or your time that you spend on negotiating with this repair worker and worrying about whether they are overcharging you. So maybe that is kind of the way to go when we feel frustrated by these, I think, overcharging maintenance fees.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to have those options. I think that one of the issues that is the case in my own country is that a lot of these options aren't really very clear, and you don't really have a way to make contact with anybody if something goes wrong. And I think that one of the good things that I found about living in Beijing, at least, is that Beijing is so massive, and there are obviously so many people here living in so many building apartments and stuff. And I think that as China starts to sort of digitize more, especially in cities like Beijing, which are obviously very technologically advanced, these kind of issues are becoming slightly easier to deal with. I mean, I've been here for about 7 years now, and I don't speak fluent Chinese, and even for myself, navigating some of these applications when I have a maintenance issue is way easier now than it was when I first arrived. And it's not even really a language thing, it's just that, if there's an issue, I can see it visually on my app, and there's buttons to press with an animation of, is it a pipe issue, is it an electricity issue, and I literally just tap it, and usually the same day, somebody will come round and check up on it. So I know that there are pros and cons to this because we are seeing less and less businesses actually existing, and it becoming more difficult for smaller businesses to get involved in this market, but I must say that it's way easier here in Beijing for me than it was ever, even in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, and I was thinking another way is that if you need to repair your appliances, try to find the repair phone number on the device to contact the original manufacturer's repair personnel. This way you can at least ensure their professionalism, and generally they will also have clear pricing on their websites.
Yeah, that I would definitely second. Well, that's, I guess, one of the benefits of buying branded goods. And when it comes to home appliances, let's say it could be a mixer, or it could be your humidifier, or your air conditioner, which I had fixed last summer, and had an issue, called up the original manufacturer, and it's a big brand. They have a very thorough and certified repair team, and yeah, I've only had good experiences actually with the repair people of specific companies because they're usually very well managed, and then you even get a customer's review call after they've left a few days later and asking about whether the repair team has been up to snuff with their skills. And with this kind of system in place, I can only say from one consumer's point of view, that is, it's worked quite splendidly in many occasions.
But still, they will charge a little more than...
Okay, it depends whether it's within the warranty time or not. And if it's a couple of years later, then of course, it's past that time limit, and you'll need to pay some more. And if it can get the thing fixed, and it's not way too expensive, of course you'll need to do the calculation yourself to see if it's worth the effort, then that's how you get it done. And also, here I find something that is an interesting, could it be a cultural divide or operational divide? Let's see. That's the concept of DIY. I think in China, for years, or let's say at least for the last 30 years, most possibly thanks to the rather affordable labor cost of this country compared to some of the more developed economies, we don't need to do stuff DIY. You can just hire someone to do it for you. But for those living in economies of very high labor cost, and most likely would somebody do it themselves simply for the fact that it will save you a few more bucks. And Josh, does that align with your general comparison of view on the subject?
I think so. I think that it aligns pretty well.
Yeah, some commonly used tools such as screwdrivers of different shapes, we can prepare some of this at home in case we need to fix that real quick. And I think after experiencing several moves, I found that sometimes installations or simple replacement of parts are not as difficult as we imagine.
All right, so try to get your hands dirty and learn a couple of tricks. And it's not that difficult, maybe. We'll be back after this break. As you sip your morning coffee, we transport you from the sea of tulips in the countryside to the exciting moments of table tennis world. From Renee to win the men's team title at table tennis. As you commute in the hustle and bustle of rush hour traffic, we guide you to navigate from intricacies of global markets, International Monetary Fund, tech revolutions, the conflict between Israel and Palestine, can cross the border, to the El Nino-triggered fires.
Over 90 active fires have been reported.
As you gather around a community event, we provide you the vibrant sounds on different topics, such as how AI empowers education, that provide teachers and students. What does Loom or the Chinese dragon mean to the Chinese people?
Symbolizing great power, good luck, and strength.
Why live stream shopping is gaining popularity in Brazil. Entrepreneurs are seeking to establish a strong presence in the Brazilian market. CGTN Radio, your constant companion, to connect people through sharing insights, interviews, and opinions that help us to see the world. Together with CGTN Radio, hear the difference. You can download the CGTN app to get more valued information.
The strong wind was howling in the westland.
He was the first Chinese citizen to graduate from Yale University in the mid-19th century.
I was born on the 17th of November. She had prominent features. 3 of us were old enough to lend a helping hand.
He navigated between 2 vastly different cultures and moved further to realize his dream and promote understanding between the people of China and the United States.
Ye Mingxing was a native of Hanyang. I realized no danger. China is really awakening.
Come and join us in discovering the incredible journey of Yong Wang in his autobiography, My Life in China and America. Check out the Audible stories on radio.cgtn.com and all major podcast platforms. Just search for the podcast Books and Beyond and find My Life in China and America. You're listening to a flashback of Roundtable, an in-depth discussion on the hottest topics in China. Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Young. I'm joined by Yushun in the studio and Josh Cotterell on the line. Coming up, something to chew on. Free pet adoption 2.0 is making waves in China's pet world. But wait, is it truly free adoption or just a sneaky way of buying a cat on installment plans? And explore the story of Chongqing's vegetable basket metro line, where elderly farmers find an important way to sustain their livelihoods within the city's bustling metro system. It's a story that intersects between tradition, compassion, and urban life on the metro. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer in a future show, whether it be something that happened in the news or something you're wondering about, email us with a voice memo to ezfmroundtable@foxmail.com. It'd be great to hear your voice, and we really appreciate if you could include your name as well as region of residence in that voice memo or email so that we know a little bit more about you when we're answering your questions. Now on Roundtable, as we move on to the next topic of discussion. When it comes to pet ownership, more animal enthusiasts in China are favoring adoption over purchasing. Businesses in shopping malls and pet shops now offer quote-unquote free adoption for dogs and cats, sometimes even including rare breeds. While appealing to budget-conscious, prospective pet owners, concerns arise about hidden expenses and potential traps behind the adoption label, raising questions about the true nature of this seemingly generous offer. I confess, with naivete, I thought pet-free adoption was about you arrive at a rescue sanctuary, pick up a dog or cat for free, and then just go home with your pet. But this is more complicated, a business venture. Therefore, it's called Free Pet Adoption 2.0.
Yeah, so here, the word free actually comes with conditions. Adopters are required to fulfill a certain period of the contract, and after this free adoption, consumers or the pet owners are required to recharge or purchase pet supplies on this platform that is designated by this business every month and continue to consume for certain periods, some for 2 years, some for 5 years. And after signing such agreements with the businesses, adopters may be required to pay a penalty if they discontinue purchase or recharges due to reasons such as the pet becoming ill or dying. And that is why on China Judgments Online, an official website which publishes core documents, there are many cases where individuals were sued after adopting a cat for free but discontinuing the purchase of cat food or cat supplies. And so, according to these, store clerks, they are saying that this is mainly to prevent you or the adopters from abusing or abandoning these pets after bringing them home. So they are setting up this kind of a contract and letting you and forcing you to buy these pet supplies.
Right. Okay, so when you mentioned platform, is this another app that I need to download if I want to get on board?
Yes, and they are provided by these businesses and where you get these pets for free.
All right. Do I need to pay anything up front once I sign the contract on the digital platform and take this cat or dog home?
No, there are no kind of a deposit payment or something. You can bring this pet home directly, but you need to sign this contract and you need to pay them monthly. And actually there are prices on the kind of a cage of these pets differently according to their different breeds, because actually they are still pricing these pets, but the price that you're paying for are the supplies that you're going to buy.
All right. Okay, so Josh, do you have any questions about the business model? And what is your knee-jerk reaction when you first hear that there is a little bit of a slightly more complicated business proposition than just free adoption?
Well, I think that I see a few red flags here. I think that it's definitely, there's a risk of exploitation. I think that when there's not a simple and clear exchange here of goods and services, I think there really isn't a risk of exploiting both the animal and the owner as well, the individuals involved. Because if the animal adoption, pet adoption, really in its essence, it's supposed to be for, I think, for people who love animals and who want them to go to a good home and who feel as though these animals deserve a good home. For example, a dog lover myself, I think I know that maybe not everybody loves dogs as much as maybe I do, but those who do love dogs will probably agree with me, and they feel as though these animals shouldn't really be equated to some sort of like economic value, and so actually this is not free at all. If there is some agreement to purchase food, for example, for the next You guys mentioned like 3 to 5 years, right, or 2 to 5 years, or different ones in place in my own country as well. That's not free at all, you know. That is purchasing the dog. So I think that it is very misleading here, and I know that when it comes to the industry of purchasing pets, right, which does exist and is legal, I think, in all over the world, this business practice is definitely at risk of exploitation in many ways. So yeah, I don't think this is adoption at all.
Actually, not everyone are against these kind of business mode, to be honest. For some consumers, they accept it as a form of installment payment, and passing these stores are generally specific, more expensive breeds, to be honest, such as, you know, British Shorthair, Russian Blue, or Devon Rex, or Maine Coon, etc. So if this I think pet owner or adopter, they want some of these specific breeds of cats or pets. These pets on the market may cost them between like 2,000 to 10,000 yuan. That's about around $300 to $1,400. So they still need to buy pet supplies eventually, and they will buy them on any platform. So why not just buy them on this designated platform? And at the same time, a monthly expense of several hundred yuan is, I think, they think it's still within an acceptable range for them. But I think the controversy lies in the fact that some pets may already have certain illness when handed over to adopters. So if the adopters are unaware and the pets fall ill or pass away after adoption, the adopters not only need to pay for the medical expenses, but also continue to purchase cat food or other items monthly as stipulated in the contract. And that is, I think, the main conflicts in these cases.
Well, that's just a terrible place to be. When, upon adoption, shouldn't all the animals be vaccinated and receive necessary treatment if that's needed?
Yes, actually, there are some laws on this. The health condition of pets need to be clarified. According to a lawyer, Luo Aiping, from a Beijing law firm, if businesses conceal the health condition of pets during the sale process and sell sick pets at a high price under the guise of free adoption, it constitutes fraudulent behavior during the contract formation. And according to the Civil Code, which concerns the effectiveness of civil legal acts conducted by fraudulent means, if consumers find themselves in a free adoption scam, they have the right to revoke the contract.
So, all in all, is this business proposition legal?
I think not all these adoptions are scams, of course, because some of these, and they are offering, when you're paying for that pet monthly, they're offering you supplies and cat food or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's important to remain vigilant. Said the operator of a chain cat shelter in Chengdu. So some free adoption services may lead to health issues for pets or force adopters to purchase overpriced and low-quality cat food and litter after adoption. But in fact, this also affects the reputation of some of these genuine rescue and adoption organizations, because they are the ones that are actually offering free adoption, and they will mostly vaccinate for these, we say, stray animals and stray cats and stray dogs.
Yeah, this is not really adoption, really. If it's a business proposition, then somebody is here to make some money, and then it's following the money is always a good way to get to the bottom of things. So you're saying that despite the prospective pet owner does not need to pay up front, but you're paying, is it for the cat food and feed and, to the exact amount, or you need to pay a monthly deposit and basically deposit that amount of money in the account of that business, and therefore it has liquidity to do all kinds of stuff. And is that essentially what's happening?
It's actually the money that you spend are the money you can buy only for the pets, because you are actually recharging on this, we say, e-commerce platform, and you can only buy the items that is sold on this platform.
Before we talk about animal welfare, how exactly are these businesses making a profit out of this? Because they're not asking you to pay upfront.
Well, there's a lot of market in this industry, and there's a lot of ways to make profit, actually. First of all, I know that a lot of adoption services, they are involved in events and fundraisers. They have like adoption events. This is massively popular in my own country and in the US, such as adoption fairs, educational seminars and things like this. They can use these events to raise funds, but a lot of the time these funds are sort of raised in a charitable manner, right? And I think that the question you're asking is more about, as a business, how do they make profit, right? So pet adoption services, I think that although, as we've discussed today, they may be labeled as free, there are a lot of other charges involved other than just the acquisition of the animal, right? There are a lot of things like covering the costs of caring for the animals. There are many expenses such as spaying and neutering, vaccinations, even things like microchipping. Again, although some of these costs may be considered like charitable, if the business is big enough, they can make good business with this, right? They can have business with the service that neuters the dog or the service that microchips the dog, for example, or whatever animal it is. I guess it would usually be a dog or a cat, right? But dogs are usually the ones that roam about freely, so that's why you microchip them so that you can track them, right? Like any business, you know, if you have a massive adoption service and you're microchipping a lot of dogs, that's business in itself. You're probably doing business with the company that's microchipping them. And I think also, again, like pet products, in this specific examples that you guys have been talking about today, we're talking about, for example, pet food, right? Again, if this company's big enough and the purchaser has agreed to pay for pet food for 5 years, this pet food is usually going to be from the same brand, right? These adoption shelters are probably going to operate with retail stores for things like toys, food and bedding and stuff like this. There's a massive company in my own country called Pets at Home, and they offer some services like this as well. So there's a lot of business to be done here, I think. Not to mention things like sponsorships as well from bigger companies.
So therefore,
Deals.
okay, here's a little bit of a linguistic question. So when we talk about adoption, like in the international situation, does that automatically evoke, oh, it's free? Or do you kind of expect to pay a certain amount of money, but usually maybe it's a small sum of money because you're not purchasing a new animal, but it's more like rescuing from an existing number of animals?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because there is sometimes a little bit of crossover between these two words, which is adoption and rescuing. And rescuing an animal is similar in some ways, but it's also quite different, right? Because to adopt doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting the animal for free all of the time, right? It usually means that it's the animal's second or maybe even third or fourth home, right? It usually means that the animal is not quote unquote new, right? Or something like this. I'm sure that there's probably better words to use than that. Rescuing an animal is slightly different because you would usually get it from a rescue shelter, but usually you would adopt an animal from this kind of place as well. So it's a good question that you asked because these terms I think sometimes are used interchangeably when they can be quite different when it comes to the economic value placed on them both.
Yeah, and also in the case scenario that we headed this discussion off with, there could be this maybe intentional exploitation on people's good intention, because once you see adoption and you immediately think of, oh, this is a good thing to do, and also it says it's at zero cost, therefore free, and to get people sort of interested in the proposition when in fact after attempting to explain the whole scheme, it doesn't sound to be all that free at all. So
yeah, and I think according to some of the cat owners that I know, without including medical expenses, the consumption of daily items such as cat food and cat litter does not reach the amount that's stipulated by these businesses. So this may result in consumers not being able to spend all of their recharged money or being forced to make excessive purchases. And that, I think, is the reason and the way that they can give these adopters these pets for free. And they just want their capital to be in their platform, so that I think this is the thing that they actually want. They would like to have your money in their account. But of course, it is flowing because you can actually spend this money. Still, with a huge amount of consumers, I would say, the total sum of expenses exceeds the price of purchasing a cat. And in that case, they are actually selling these pet products. And I think that is the main profit that they are gaining from this business mode.
So for those who are serious about adoption, what are some of the things one needs to go through your mind before actually making that important decision?
Sure, well, I think the first thing, of course, is your living situation. I think that you need to have a space that's suitable for your pet. Actually, a lot of responsible adoption agencies, I know that they will actually come and interview you and ask you some of these questions. And as a professional, they'll be able to tell you whether your space is suitable for this type of pet and maybe even a certain type of breed. There are different types of breeds that require different amounts of space, different amounts of exercise, etc., etc. And I think that's also why you have to consider your lifestyle compatibility, right? How often are you going to be home? How much time are you going to be able to spend with the animal? Is the animal going to be able to rely on you for long-term commitment, right? Pets can live for many, many years. And I think that a lot of people, when they acquire the animal, they maybe don't consider that. And I think this is often why animals end up getting abandoned and things like this. It's a huge commitment, and I think that we all need to consider this before buying or adopting.
Yes, and also I think we should not focus on the specific breeds of pets, because opt to adopt animals from reputable channels such as National Adoption Days and Animal Protection Centers, which typically do not charge fees. And I think why we are discussing this issue and a lot of this promotional lines of these free adoption, quote-unquote free adoption stores are they can offer special or specific breeds of animals. So I think inquire about costs before adoption, and if there are any doubts, refrain from adopting. And also we should not, and I think a lot of people are not caring too much about the breeds of the pets they are going to adopt. And a staff member at a stray animal rescue center said they hope that people adopt more stray animals rather than those attractive purebred pets. And I think the way that we actually showing our love to these stray animals.
With this kind of topic, I often feel the living being, which is the animal or the pet itself, is kind of neglected. I think the most important thing is, okay, in my opinion, is the welfare of the pet and the animal, and therefore it's one promising change that the preference for pet adoption over purchase is gaining ground in this country. And with these new inventions, I think always having some second thoughts and to really understand what's behind the scheme is kind of important here. Coming up next, join us in uncovering the story of Chongqing's vegetable basket metro line. Stay tuned.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable, where East meets West, and understanding is the goal.
It's the hour of Roundtable with myself, He Young. I'm joined by Yu Shun and Josh Cotterill. In the vibrant city of Chongqing in western China, where close to 32 million residents call home, a metro line, affectionately known as the Vegetable Basket Line, winds its way through the urban landscape. Each morning, amidst the hustle and bustle, woven baskets brimming with fresh produce accompany the briefcases and backpacks of commuters. These backpacks belong to a group of elderly farmers from nearby towns who rely on the metro to transport their goods into the city, hoping for better prices. So this vegetable basket metro line has caught the attention of so many people in this country. Tell us a little bit more about its history and present-day story.
So this is actually a nickname of the Line 4 in Chongqing, southwest of China, and it is a line connecting Sichuan town to the city center, and it has a total length of 32.8 kilometers and 15 stations. It has provided local farmers near the town with a wider channel for selling their produce since its opening in 2022. And before the line opened, farmers would sell their vegetables in their town, and the town was small, so vegetables sold slowly and prices were very low. But after the metro opened, farmers discovered that they could sell their vegetables for a higher price in the city center. So many farmers started taking the metro to the city to sell their vegetables, and they may carry basket on their backs or in a small cart. And